Hello,
All right.
everybody. It's a wrap.
Excellent. Well, I want to welcome everyone to the School Transportation Nation podcast. I'm Tony Corcoran, the publisher and president of STN. And this episode is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. And our tech tip is brought to you by Zonar, a leader in smart fleet management. We just wrapped the Transportation Director Summit. My co-host, Mr. Ryan Gray. Thanks a lot for all your hard work, Ryan.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. It was a team effort, so there was a lot of work done behind the scenes. Our event staff, hats off to them. Another successful conference summit. This one was very ambitious. More so, I think, than our other three virtual conferences that we had, because really taking a transportation director summit as we've known it for the last several years in both Reno and in Indianapolis, tied to the STN Expo, it's that meeting time, bringing folks together with vendors and suppliers and packaging it around leadership discussions and activities and exercises, and taking that to a virtual world. Really, forced us to stretch a bit. So hopefully everyone had a good time, had great conversations. And, again, hats off to Alice, Amy, and Sam in particular, as well as Kent and our entire staff for really pulling this off. So it was very ambitious and, a lot of hard work, but, I think that it was well worth it.
Yeah, I appreciate all our attendees and our sponsors. They really made this event great. It's all about participation. We're all kind of stuck in this virtual world for a little bit longer, but we're going to be working towards in person here into the future. But it takes a team. It's just, in the end, you can't do it without people. If that's school transportation or school transportation news, right? Everything we do it with our team, and they're an invaluable part of everything that we do, through all the things that happen and all the noise that happens in your operation and all the things that are outside of your control. I think what Holly taught us today is to be mindful, right? Like, to try to rein it in. We had lots of people talking about different acronyms. David Horsager, who is from the Trust Edge, he talked a lot about, that kind of volatility around us, uncertainty. Meredith talked about Elliot Powell. And it was just, there's so many great ideas to unpack. Maybe just starting from the top, Ryan, Meredith Elliott Powell kicked off with our concept of, thrive in this uncertain world. What were your kind of big takeaways from her, maybe part one and part two today?
Yeah, well, I think it's more aptly said by an expert like her, something we've been talking about for a year now, where uncertainty doesn't have to be a bad thing. We think of it, and no one likes change because people don't like the unknown. There was someone, and it might have been her, and I've heard this before, where people would rather know something bad than not know the potential. They would, because people feel safe that they, at least we know it's horrible, it's bad, unemployment, whatever the case might be, but we know what it is, and we can see it, we can feel it, we can touch it, we can experience it. The other stuff that gets really esoteric, where it forces us to become, diagnose things or predict things, our human brains just have really an issue with that. So I think that she gave some really good tips on how to flip the script. Come at things with a razor-like focus from an organizational standpoint, from a personal standpoint. If you're really focused on what you want to do, what you need to get done, what your staff needs to get done, that's what's important. What needs to happen. And then there's all these elements that you can bring into, and then we talked with Don Harkey about this. Of course, David Horsager touched on this. It's how you work with your staff, how you're a leader, how you influence where things go from there. You don't have to have the solution to everything. Don Harkey said, throw that back on your employees. That's what leadership is. It's not coming and having the answer to everything. It's going to them and saying, hey, here's where we need to go. Here's, I think, where we need to go. Now help me color it in. Help us color in the lines. How are we going to make this happen? Why are we going to make this happen? So some of the things that stood out to me.
Yeah, one of the big things was the relentless vision, right? I mean, you touched on it there slightly, but it's the example she gave of being on a whitewater river rafting trip, and the rapids are a 2 or 3. But with COVID, the water's gotten a lot choppier. It's become a 4 or a 5. And, all you are seeing is all the rocks, all the obstacles, and you're focused on that. And your boat, or maybe it's your bus, is going to be drugged right into those rocks. And you have to keep an eye on what your vision is. And it's about the kids, right? It's about the kids. It's about keeping them safe and doing everything that we can to get them to school safely in the most, efficient way possible. But in the end, that razor focus is about children. And I think that brings us back as a company, as STN. That should bring you back as a school transportation professional to really ground you that, yes, that is why I do what I do every day, is to impact children's lives. And it's a powerful message. It's very powerful. And, Meredith touched on predicting change, right? With all the uncertainty, flipping the script, as you said, how do you predict change? How do you anticipate what you can't see, right? What's that long-term vision? And if it is to protect kids, what can I do to put things in place that are within my control? And then take those steps and bring everybody in the organization around that idea to move them forward. And then that's a very powerful concept, right? Because, she called it the skeptic, right? You're looking at society, competition, economic change, politics, technology, industry, and customers, right? All those big ideas unpacked on a very granular level affect your decision making. And she recommended that you have a meeting around that and talk about that as a team. And those are really powerful things, right? You can just look at one of those silos and say, okay, how does that affect our world in transportation? If you're a bus contractor or you're a school district operating, if you're rural or you're big metro, right? All these kind of environmental things affect you. And maybe, where you are, if you're in Texas or Florida, you're operating at a different level than if you're in California where we're at, right? We're just starting to fire up out here. So it's very interesting to see those dynamic elements. But I love the idea that she talked about with collaborating, Ryan. And you touched on it there a second ago. I think one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest things that I talked about and I heard at this Transportation Director Summit was about staffing and staffing shortages and how we could potentially collaborate with others. Ryan, was that something you heard, or what, any of the big ideas that you took away?
Yeah, definitely. And Meredith touched on it. And I brought this up in our Let's Talk staff shortages yesterday, where there was a Wall Street Journal article, and there's probably some other ones I happened to read in the Wall Street Journal. But it just came out, I think, last week, that the studies on labor rates are showing that workers 55 and older have fallen to 38%, I think from about 44 or 45%. So that's a loss of 1.45 million people from the workforce. And, where do we see the demographics fall for a lot of school bus drivers? 55 and older, a lot of retirees. So that fits with the overall trend that we've been seeing in the driver shortage. And at the same time, this study shows that retirement has also increased nearly a percentage point from about 18.5% to 19.3%. And there's various reasons, right? A lot of folks maybe they thought they were coming up on retirement. Maybe they wanted to work a little bit longer, and they thought, this is a really good time. Everything's uncertain right now. I'm older. I'm worried about my health. Now I can retire. Let me do it. But, as again, we're starting to come out of this COVID-19 thing, and there's still a lot of uncertainty around it, right? Yesterday or today, Rochelle Walensky, the director of CDC, sounded an alarm basically about, well, there could be a fourth, spike in this COVID-19 coming, despite everyone getting, vaccinated. So there's still a lot of uncertainty there. And, really, there's no more uncertainty than driver shortages. And we talked today, I talked with Bethany Gross, who's the Associate Director of the Center for Reinventing Public Education, and we were talking about the American Rescue Plan and the funds where, $122.55 billion for education. School Bus has an angle to get some of that money and some significant money, but, be careful what you wish for. There are potential pitfalls with that. I flipped it to, again, what we've been really trying to focus on, especially this past year and with this conference, is let's look at the positive. Let's look at the opportunities and not so much look at it as a challenge. So we discussed, how that factors in with the driver shortage, and there's money that's being made available through the American Rescue Plan to address these devastating layoffs and to hire more support staff. A lot of that around COVID-19. But what I came away with that Bethany said is, as she's talking and surveying school superintendents nationwide, that transportation, again, has an opportunity to stand up, let its voice be heard, and, make the case. We keep talking about that. Make the case. Be sure to be connecting those dots for everyone, for your administration, so that they know, they don't have to think about it. You're telling them, you're showing them the data about how school busing and school transportation affects learning in the classroom. Don't rely on them to connect the dots. You need to do it for them. And, as Bethany said, there's so much going on, and there's been so much going on over this past year that superintendents, it's like, they're in, a Star Wars game. They're at light speed. They're just like asteroids and stars, and, the interplanetary cosmos is just flying by them, and they're trying to focus on, the task at hand. So, transportation can continue to be that important resource.
Excellent thoughts there, Ryan. And, I want to pause and provide a tech tip brought to you by Zonar, a leader in smart fleet management. The fleet tech you add now will shape how your fleet runs next year and the year after that. Outfit each bus to protect everyone on board. Ask a Zonar expert how electronically verified inspections and sanitizations work. Support contact tracing, protect students from the wrong bus, wrong stop mistakes, and communicate clearly with parents through a free mobile app. Move forward with the riders and give them what they need. Make sure you visit Zonar learn more at zonarsystems.com/protect. That's zonarsystems.com/protect. All right, Ryan, we had some amazing speakers, and, I want to talk a little bit about our friends, basically, that we talked to earlier, which we had David Horsager, who we've had speak before about the 8 pillars of trust. And I think he dove into it and talked a lot about, how important is it for parents to trust us? How important is it for them to trust you as transportation professionals to hand the kid off to you to get them to school? And now with COVID, it really, it puts a laser focused on what you need to do. And you touched on some of the funding that may be available. What funds can we tap into to be sure we have the right tools to give parents that peace of mind? So I think as everybody kind of looks at all this funding coming at us, all these things, everything moving at light speed, it brings us back. It's about the kids. It's that relentless vision. How do we stay in that lane and making decisions, right? Meredith Elliott Powell talked a little bit about making decisions, the core values, coming back to that. I think everything kind of intrinsically kind of works together. What David was saying with trust, what Meredith was saying with having core values and a razor focus, everything kind of, they didn't meet beforehand and talk. These messages are independent of each other, but I feel like they all have a very focused message around a very singular thing that everybody needs to be aware of and to take advantage of when you're looking at these. You can't be stuck in quicksand during COVID, right? And we're starting to come out of that. But as Ryan said, there's still uncertainty. So how do you prepare yourself And how do you anticipate things? And where do you make those right decisions that are going to be the best for the kids?
Absolutely. And something to remember about this all, whether it be David Horsager or Meredith Elliott Powell or Don Harkey, this is information that's culled through research. This is not just some talking head up there going, oh, this is the world according to me. I mean, and it is interesting to see how they all align. It's like they're all from the same playbook. They're all bringing different perspectives, and they're all super engaging. So it's not like hearing the same thing, but I'm sitting here listening to all the different sessions, and I'm going, oh yeah, and I'm connecting the dots. And yeah, that's what Dawn was saying, something similar to that. Meredith was just talking about that, David. And then, I think it was pretty cool to bring that all back with Holly Duckworth, more research based. I mean, from the mindfulness, because, it's so important to be looking at how you communicate and how you promote engagement, and that's through trust, and how you're a strategic thinker. But it's also getting yourself in that right mindset. So really cool how that all came about. We couldn't have planned it better, Tony. So
Excellent. Yeah, no. And Holly, I think, when you start hearing her, she's got like this calming voice.
Oh, yeah.
It's so zen, right? She kind of like slows you down for a second and says, all right, man, there's so many things pulling at me. I have my kids, got my family, I've got work, I've got the Transportation Director Summit, right? It's like everything that's right in front of you within your periphery. But like, I even for a second while I'm working at the show, I'm like, I just need to put down my phone, grab a breath, just focus. Your mind can wander left or right, but you kind of just bring it back, take some deep breaths. I know my Apple Watch tells me to take a breath every once in a while. I think it knows me too, but it's one of those things you just have to be so mindful to take the stress down a notch. And I don't know about all you out there that are listening, but throw something in the chat for us, but we'd love to hear from you. Like, did that like bring your stress level down maybe 1 or 2 levels? Because for me, I was like, man, it totally centered me. And it's crazy how something so simple in your day can do that. And she used that analogy, like brushing your teeth, right? You don't just brush your teeth once and expect your teeth to be clean forever, right? You have to keep working at it. And it's taking 2 minutes a day to take a breath. I mean, I almost recommend that, right? Like, what a great way to kind of just bring it down a notch, kind of focus yourself, center yourself, clear your mind, and like keep moving forward and stay razor focused. I love that message, Ryan.
And well, these are things that, I mean, I remember when my daughter doesn't watch it much anymore, but Sesame Street. And, when they teach kids to take a deep breath and count to 5. Daniel Tiger and all these, some of you that have some of these little kids, this might resonate. I know it does with you, Tony, but it's those are things we forget as adults, and we get into the work world and we get all serious. And, I found myself last night, I was practicing as I was sitting there watching one of the basketball games, the tournament games on TV. And I just decided to take 2 minutes. Holly said it, you can do it in 2 minutes. You don't have to do this. You don't have to have the yoga mat and burning incense, and that's fine. You can certainly do that, but mindfulness can be little increments throughout the day. Something she said today really resonated with me. How are you going to be? And being mindful and being in the moment. And if you find yourself getting stressed or agitated, being mindful is about catching yourself, pausing, breathing, centering yourself. And then she said it, then you can make that conscious effort to choose again, to be different and be the way you want to be rather than the way that society is pulling you or stress is molding you.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that, Ryan. Well, you know what? If you guys love the Transportation Director Summit, I have great news for you. I have an extra credit opportunity. Tomorrow, TransFinder is hosting a webinar on March 31st at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. They could not be here with us at the TD Summit, but they have a special offer for you, and that's a free Fitbit. And also, Transportation Director Summit attendees will be given a special gift by TransFinder. You guys got to check your email a little later. Our team is working on it, but we're going to get something out special for you from TransFinder. They'd love to see you for a little bit of a lunch and learn. So get ahead of the class and get your head out of the clouds and learn how cloud hosting can reduce you and your team's stress. How very zen, right, Ryan? And there was a time when data in the cloud was a novelty, a mystery, a concern. Times have changed, and now the most sensitive data is most likely in the cloud, but secure behind firewalls, protocols, monitoring services. Today, more of TransFinder's clients are turning to the cloud more than ever before. Most realize that their data is now even safer in the cloud than on servers on their own premises. With the release of TransFinder's award-winning RouteFinder Plus solution being hosted on the cloud, which is required. In this webinar, you'll hear great client stories and learn the benefits of cloud hosting, and you can have some peace of mind. And that's great, always knowing that it's there and easy to access. Again, all attendees will have a chance to win a Fitbit, and there will be a special gift for TD Summit attendees as an extra special bonus. You can go to stnonline.com/go/8J. And you'll also get an email from us to go check that out. And you can always go to TransFinder's website as well. It's transfinder.com. They will be able to direct you to the webinar so you can take advantage of all the great information. Wonderful. Well, Ryan, before we tie a bow on this and wrap it up, I want to just touch one more speaker that we heard from, Mr. Don Harkey, who I spoke with about employees, about everything happening in the world with toxicity, with stress, with unengaged employees in the virtual world. Everybody's going back. How are they feeling about it? What hit you about that session, Ryan?
I think that, Don does a great job, and we've worked with him a lot, and he really knows us very well. But I mentioned it earlier. The problem that managers or leaders often have is that we want to solve the problem, and I fall into this all the time. People come to me and they're like, "What do we do?" or "How do we do this?" And I really have to catch myself, and it's not my job is not to have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, and I think that oftentimes leaders are looked at as having all the answers, and that we're not these supermen, superwomen that are just all knowing, all being. We're only as good as the people we work with and the people we interact with. So it's flipping that back. We're talking about flipping the script. Go back, and this is engagement 101 is go to them and say, that's a great point, validate it, and be like, I've been thinking that too. But what do you think we should do? You're out, you're working, you're out there driving the school buses, you're out there, maintaining the school buses, you're routing, you're talking to drivers on dispatch every day. What ideas do you have? And getting that group think, and to a point, because he pointed out as well, I think it was yesterday, that you can always go overboard. They could, what do you want to do? Oh, we want to have barbecues every Friday, and we want to do this and that. Hey, who doesn't love the barbecues? But are you meeting your core values? Are you meeting your mission statement? And again, you brought it up at the top, Tony. It's about the children. It's about safety. So what ideas can you put forth that help us get closer to that goal, to that core value? So those were some of the things that jumped out to me. Also, developing a clear line of sight on what winning looks like, so that when you're having those conversations and they know, hey, this is what it looks like to win, rather than this ambiguity and they're really not sure. And again, it comes back to your core values and your mission. I think that's the way that he said it, winning over the hearts of your people. Everybody wants direction. And, there are certain people that I think Meredith said there's 2% of the people out there are visionaries. They're like Tony, that are cooking up they see the movie going on in their mind, but they might not necessarily know how to get there. They see what's possible, but then they go back to the rest of the folks who are the action oriented people, the folks that get it done, and then they can come back, and then it can be this cohesive unit and this kind of storyboard that's developed. So those are some of the things that jumped out to me from his talk.
Yeah, Don, I agree. Ryan, those are great points. Don really touched on how do you engage your team, right? And I said it during this session. How do you engage your employees? You engage them, right? It sounds so crazy. Like, yeah, that's all you have to do is just ask them. Make sure they have a voice. The same goes for your partners, the people you work with. The parents want to have a voice. The kids have a voice, right? Your team has a voice. It's how do you internalize all those voices and make decisions as an operation to help benefit the kids, right? Just bring it right back to that core value. Benefit the kids. How do we do that? How do we spend money on technology? How do we invest in training? There's a lot of people here at the Transportation Director Summit, a lot of sponsors that have different products, from Wi-Fi to electric school buses to special needs based things, technology management things. There's so many different players that do these things in the market, and they're here to help you, like our friends at Zonar or TransFinder, right? They're here to help you manage these challenges. And chances are they have customers that have faced similar challenges to you. So reach out, ask them that question. Every call doesn't have to be a sales call, right? It can be a conversation about how you can work together and collaborate as partners, right? To me, those are the biggest opportunities. One of the big things that Don touched on too is when you're working with your team, you have to be sure you are engaging them all the way through the process of onboarding and carrying that all the way through. And you have different leaders in your company that are going to help coach up other team members to help them get them on the bus. And if they're not going to be on that bus, it's best to have that watershed moment where, like you said, you've got water that comes off one way or the other, but when it's flat, it's just sit there and it's going to get through. So you got to just take those moments to make them teaching moments and keep everybody engaged. And all this funding and everything that's going to come at you in the next 6 months or sooner, right? Money's already flowing. You have to advocate to your administration on that. The bottom line is you need this tech to help safeguard children. If that's air purification, if that's contact tracing, if that's PPE, cleaners, surface disinfectants, sanitizers, there's a lot of different things, right? Ultimately, you got to come back to that value proposition and how you help the kids get there safe. So to me, those are the big things, Ryan, that jump out as the big takeaways from the event is how do we look at everything? How do we predict change? How do we prepare ourselves? And how do we make rock solid decisions with the kids in mind?
Absolutely. Well, lots to think about there, and hope everybody walked away with some actionable items and some things to make them and their teams better at home. So it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, well, I want to thank everybody for coming, all our attendees at the Transportation Directors Summit. You guys were awesome. Round of applause. Hey, give yourself a virtual round of applause. Maybe applause in the chat. Feel free to drop something in there. We appreciate you guys. Want to thank you for coming to this kind of closing session live podcast of the School Transportation Nation, which is brought to you by TransFinder and Zonar. We appreciate our sponsors. And, it could not work without the STN staff. Round of applause to them. Thank you, attendees, sponsors, all our stakeholders, collaborators. We couldn't have done it without you guys. And, having this vision and pulling it together is no easy task. And we're going to continue the big vision. Holly kind of closed out. Holly Duckworth said, hey, just what's your mindful vision of going forward? And that vision for me is getting our in-person conferences going again. How can we do that? We have some virtual ones still coming up, but how can we get in person going again? And what's that going to take? So we'd love to see all of you at the STN Expo in Indianapolis, October 1st through the 5th. Our Transporting Students with Disabilities Conference down in Dallas, Frisco. That would be November 17th through the 22nd. And STN Expo Reno, December 4th through the 9th. More info at stnexpo.com. We've got all our virtual conferences there coming up as well. Green Bus Summit. We may even have the Bus Technology Summit again for you here coming up in the summer. Lots going on, lots to do. And we really appreciate you guys. And make sure if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, you go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, find us, School Transportation Nation, subscribe. You'll get an episode every week from us. Ryan and I are always here for you, talking about the latest and greatest in school transportation, all the things you need, COVID, school restart, all the great information you guys need every week. We're keeping an eye on all that all the time. Ryan, I want to thank you personally. It was a great day. Appreciate you. And any last words to the audience?
Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks again. And we know that it's difficult when you're at work and you got all these, issues pulling you left and right, and you got kids that you're transporting and things happen. But we really appreciate you guys being here and taking the time.
Yeah, guys, don't forget, flip the script on it. Appreciate you. School Transportation Nation, we love you, audience. Thanks so much for being here.
Peace out.